Are we awake? Oh, man. Love it. This works too? No. Awesome. Awesome. Love seeing this room. Look at all these bright faces. Has anybody been to NET multiple times now? You guys start to feel the Vector family we have going here? I love it so much. Seeing all the familiar faces. Thanks. Oh, sweet. The play button? Sweet. So I'm grateful you're here. Hope you're grateful you're here, right? We all chose to elevate. There's a lot of things we could be doing this week, especially coming off of VCAs. So you guys are here to elevate. We all are. We're going to grow a lot. You guys want to have your best year ever? Yeah. All right. Go ahead and stand up real quick. Get some energy. High five your neighbor and say you're a rock star. High five the person behind you. And say, I drink CPO. This is awesome. So, in preparation for talking about new customers, I was thinking about what's the number one key to people that sell to a lot of new customers. And so if you're taking notes, I got one thing. It's the most important thing. Grow out your beard. The longer the beard gets, the more you sell, I'm telling you. So if you look at Sean Henry, if anybody knows Sean Henry, he's the gnarliest beard in the room, and he sells a lot of Cutco. So I think that's number one. No, just kidding. Really, my objective here is I want to talk about the 80-20 of what actually works with new customers, okay? So 80-20 is something that Ray Reed on our team talks about all the time, and I love the philosophy. And I think you can do that the same for everything you learn here at NET. So when you're taking your notes of what you actually want to implement, just think about what's the 20% of the things you learn here that are going to create 80% of the results, and really you can kind of forget the rest. So pare it down. You don't need to have 10 pages of notes and implement 10 pages, right? And the same thing for when we're talking to new customers. You don't really need to know everything. You just need to know what's most effective most of the time, right? So when you guys are going through your scripts and you guys are developing your approaches and when you're thinking about what to do, just think about what's the most important 20% that's going to make most of the difference, okay? And that's what we're going to talk about here. So really, I wanted to talk a little bit about, oh, there we go, our handout already. We'll get to that in a second, but the outline for my talk is really I want to talk about the foundation of talking to new customers and kind of some sections of the approach, but more philosophy of this because we're all on different scripts, right? So I'm not really going to go into the what to say necessarily because I actually think that that's much less important than some of these keys we're going to have here. And so that's where this handout's going to come into play. We just have 4 keys. Well, really 3, and then you guys can take notes underneath there about what you want to implement. So, let's dive in. You guys ready to dive in? All right, so number 1, does anybody know the answer to this? Sales is a what? Energy sport, right? Have you guys ever been doing a 12-hour shift at the booth, and you can't even hold your head up at the end of the day? That's unacceptable, by the way. That's up to you to still have energy. Okay? There's a lot of ways that you can actually influence that energy. Josh Muller interviewed me recently, and we talk about what you're eating, what you're drinking, how you're sleeping, how you're working out, these components of being healthy that keep your energy up. So really, I think the key to a big day is not getting tired and not checking out. I think that's the biggest key I could ever share with anybody that influenced my year. Part of traveling full-time was to keep my energy up. I love traveling. I love blending work and play. So when I do that and I don't feel like I'm working, I feel a lot better. I have a lot more energy. So really, no script matters unless you can transfer your energy to the client. So example, have you ever been asking someone if they want to go ahead and get the set or something like that, and you just feel this weird disconnect and you know they're going to say no? Right? You guys heard, was that Brandon talking about that? Don't ask for the order unless you're sure you're going to get it, right? So if you guys have felt that, that's because you haven't transferred enough energy to that person. right? So a lot of times when we're closing, we're like, okay, hey, so, signature set, whatever, or, ultimate set's right around $3,000. By the way, what you're getting with that is this and this and this. Oh, and also you're going to get the 3 cutting boards and the sharpener. And real quick, can you pick one of these gadgets, right? And you're like stacking the deck. Really what you're doing is you're transferring energy and enthusiasm to this person. So then when you ask the question, it's like it's built up. Do you know what I'm talking about? You ever feel it at the booth? When you really close someone, you have that great connection, and you've transferred all that energy. So I really implore you to explore ways that you can really get your energy up. So how can we affect our energy? You guys want to shout some stuff up? Okay, water. Drink a lot of water. No sodas. Cut soda out of your daily routine if you're working. Drink it when you're not working. Anything with sugar, I highly recommend against. What are other things that increase our energy other than lots of coffee? Exercise, cool. So anything to get your heart rate going in the morning, studies have shown that affects your brain's ability to process. Highly recommend anything you do to get your heart rate up, even if it's like 10 push-ups when you wake up. I'm telling you, you'll sell more. What else? Meditating, I like that. Mindfulness. Are you picturing the orders you're about to get? Jason talks about that all the time. He's like, oh yeah, I already saw that ultimate happen. Right? What else? Journaling, that can get your mental energy up. I like that. Physical energy, what else? Snacks. Okay, so how do we eat healthy at the booth? Anybody know? Granola bars are good. Smoothies. Nuts. Okay, we don't have to dive into this too much, but actually there's really 3 nuts I would recommend if you're eating nuts at the booth. Don't do trail mix. Macadamia, Brazil nuts, and walnuts. I don't need to get into why, but yeah, especially walnuts. They have omega-3s. They're anti-inflammatory. Do you guys want some food hacks? Yeah. I'll give you some food hacks, because traveling a lot, you have to figure out how you can eat on the road a lot. So we talked about this at our VCAs recently, and I went through like all my foods, and it was kind of fun. So if you guys are going into a new city and you're doing a show, the night before I'll stop at like a Publix or a grocery store. And if you're vegetarian, obviously you won't get the chicken, but I'll get like some chicken breast. Buy the good stuff. There's a lot of reasons not to buy the bad stuff. We can get into that later. But buy something that's like organic and free range. It can be like $3-4 a pound. It's not a big deal, okay? So buy some chicken. You can buy, if you can cook at your Airbnb, always get an Airbnb, right? So I'll do like chicken and rice and veggies like all weekend long. And I can make my meals for 50 cents a meal. It's awesome. Other things that you can snack on, avocados. We all know avocados. Is there any avocado fans in here? Am I the only one? Jeez, I love avocados. And then actually a big hack is the pre-bagged salads. And if you guys want the best one, it's the Asian chopped salad. Dylan knows. Every booth, I'm like munching on these Asian chopped salads. Okay? So just think about it, like none of the crap, right? If you ever eat fair food, anybody done that and like died at their booth? Yeah, it's like corn dogs galore. Oh my gosh, it's awesome. All right, really, so, 3 keys to mind are your rest, right? Rest properly, your activity, and your proper nourishment, okay? If you guys want more on that, I'm really, like, into this stuff. I was a kinesiology major, so this is something I'm interested in. Any questions? Yeah. Yeah, great question. B12 I actually don't, because I eat meat, so it's not as, but if you're a vegetarian, definitely take it. Magnesium is like the one supplement that makes a humongous difference. It's the one electrolyte we're the most efficient in. So I heard a podcast courtesy of Tyler Kaplan, and it's a pretty big deal if you do some research. So magnesium's cheap. Yeah, great question. Magnesium's really all you really need. Makes a big difference, though. I notice when I don't take it. Cool. All right. Yeah, there you go. Poor Brian. Oh, man, poor Brian. So, all right, let's talk about this. It got a little messed up, but so when we're talking about who sells who, right? What do you think that first blank is? Strong what? Conviction. Close, yeah, strong conviction. Right, we know that, like, the most certain person wins. We've heard that before. Very strong conviction. We talked recently about what's your favorite set, right? And people are like, signature set. It's like, well, you're probably not selling a lot of ultimates because you don't have conviction. It took me a while to have a lot of conviction in the ultimate set to be able to sell Cutco owners, obviously not my talk, to sell Cutco owners ultimate upgrades. But the more you use the knives and the more you learn about them, the ultimate set's the best set by far. Like, I don't know why everybody doesn't have it. And that's mixed with strong influence. So if you were writing in your notes on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your ability to influence people around you? This can be in any walk of life. It could be in sales. It can be with friends. It could be with family. A 10 is like, not I get my way. It's not manipulative. It's that when you have a strong conviction in something, that you influence others to also believe what you're talking about out of integrity, right? Rate 1 to 10. Now, if you're anything less than a 5, right, you should explore that, okay? We'll talk a little bit about that. So who sells who, right? The customer either sell you, right? We've all heard this. This is like initial training. They either sell you why they can't get Cutco today, or you sell them on why they can't, right? It really depends on your influence and your conviction. So what can we do to maximize, that's that next blank, if you guys are filling in the blanks. What can we do to maximize the opportunity as quickly as possible? Someone probably knows the stat, but Curtis closes a homemaker in like 7 minutes or something, right? Maximize the opportunity. I bet he has a lot of conviction and a lot of influence over people, so he can maximize every opportunity super quickly and sell 5 orders to your 1 order, right? And we talked about that with new customers. So abundance versus scarcity. Anybody that knows me this year, that's like the #1 shift I made was abundance. There's always enough CPO. There's always enough money. There's always enough people. There's always enough orders. There's always enough new customers to come up to me. And it doesn't matter how busy the show is. There's always enough. So how do you view money? Every week, do you sell because you need money to pay your bills? If you do, you're viewing life in a scarcity mindset. It's going to be really hard for you to close big orders. So abundance is one of the biggest keys to closing big orders, where you can ask for a 4K order because you're like, I could buy that. Do you get what I'm saying? So if you're not thinking in an abundant way, that takes a lot more. That could be a talk in itself. But the #1 thing I would recommend if you want to start to move towards thinking more abundantly and thinking that there's always enough and that there's more than I could ever need is, I recommend stop setting goals. People won't like that. Stop setting a goal that I need to sell 3K to pay for my show. Or stop setting a goal that I need to sell 5K to pay for my rent and my bills. Because you're setting a ceiling for yourself. And it's really hard to break through those ceilings, and seldom we actually reach those ceilings. So a lot of times I'm just like, how do I sell as much as possible? People are like, what are you at so far on a Saturday? And I'm like, I have no idea, and don't ever ask me that. I add up on Sunday night, and I always surprise myself. It's awesome. So, abundance. Like, I'm not worried about where I'm at. I don't need to count the numbers because there's always going to be more CPO than I ever bargained for. It's a shift that I'm telling you, focus on it, and that's the biggest shift I could possibly recommend if you want to sell a lot, is there's always enough, right? My goal was 250 last year. I don't know what happened, but sold more than that. So do you believe? Everybody say, I believe. No, that's no conviction. Can we say it with conviction? I believe. Ooh, I like that. I would tell your colleagues that too when they're going for a goal. A lot of people were letting me know they believed in me at the end of the year, and it made a big difference. I started to believe it too. It's good energy on the sales floor. Oh, yeah. All right. Key #3, master the proper what? What do you think? We're talking about new customers, right? This is a basic, kind of, but it's important. Master the proper scripts, or scripting. You can say scripting. And then actually the PowerPoint doesn't match the handout. So master the proper scripting, and then focus, focus into psychology. I guess that doesn't make sense. Focus on psychology. Master the proper scripting and then focus on psychology. So there's a lot of stuff about scripts, no scripts, right? I was never a script person. I don't know if anybody relates with that, right? But it was like, never really worked for me to just like say what other people said. However, if you can master a script, like our training manual, who's a manager in here at some point? Yeah, right? Why did they learn the training manual? So they didn't think while they talked, and they could focus on reading a customer and psychology and pivoting, right? So that's the key. So really, when I talk about scripting, it's about having checkpoints, okay? And I'm taking a customer through a series of checkpoints where I know if I want to continue working with them or not, or if I'm going to move them here, or if I'm going to pivot here, or if I'm going to like order quick and move them out, right? So what I love about having a script is about having a process where if I can hit every checkpoint with every customer, it's the only way you can gauge your metrics, right? How do you know what your closing percentage is at the booth if you're doing something different every single time? Do you get what I'm saying? It's almost like in the home. Like if you're not doing a very similar service call structure with every customer, number one, your service calls are probably taking way longer than they should, right? With a good process, you could be in and out in 45 minutes all day long, right? But number two, then you can say, hey, I did 10 service calls. I closed on 6. I did the same thing with every customer. So how do I get that to 7? And now it's not arbitrary. You can actually have statistics to pull from. So when I'm at the booth and I have the proper scripting, now I'm looking, don't even remember what I'm saying half the time, and I'm like, is she facing me or is she facing to the side? Is her husband walking away, right? Like, have you ever had that? The husband walks away, you didn't catch him because you didn't notice because you're like focused on something else, and then it's impossible to close the set, right? It's like, no, come here, sir. Can you cut the leather real quick? Re-engage, right? So really, like, if you can focus on who's in front of you and not on what you're saying, you can pivot with your scripts. We're talking about where are you getting your information or your wording. It's actually information/wording is the blank. So who are you listening to? Where's your script coming from? Are you taking the things from the guy that's selling next to you? And if you are, does he have the business you want? Right? Are you listening to someone in your organization, your small organization, that maybe you shouldn't be, that maybe is doing poor practices? Right? I would quickly identify that and really know who, so a lot of times we just talk about Curtis and Josh and Jason scripts, right? It's not throwing anybody under the bus. Everybody has some great scripts. There's some awesome CSPs out there, but who's selling the most as quickly as possible with the style that I like? That's the script that I generally go for. Right? So why don't you write down, who has your style? Is there anybody that you've identified at this conference so far that you're like, I feel like I talk and I work and I act like them a little bit, so maybe their script would appeal to me. Or listen to your events team. We don't have to get into where your scripts are, but I would just be careful of how you're getting your information and where. So do you know your checkpoints that you can, does anybody know this blank? Pivot. So, why is pivoting important? You sometimes have to skip a step to close a sale, right? Have you ever been working with someone and you're like she's pulling knives out of a block, she's not paying attention to me at all, I need to do something, right? You need to be able to pivot at a moment's notice to work with the customer. So true mastery equals less is more. So we talk about the phases of mastery. Anybody ever heard that? Conscious incompetence, right? That whole cycle. So a lot of the times when we know, really you go through, I think there's 3 different stages that are a little bit not really on that same note, but I think that a lot of the times, first, we don't know anything, and we're a baby rep and we sell a homemaker out of ignorance, right? It's like, just show her the set. I don't really know what to do. And then number 2, we learn way too much, and then we word vomit on the customer, and we have a 3-hour demo, right? Anybody been through the 3-hour demo phase? Yeah. It's like, my gosh, do 3 a day. Woo, champion's way. I was in a house recently for a long time, and I was like, what am I doing? Oh my gosh. So you get there, and you know too much. Phase 3 is where you know just when to use your wealth of information at the perfect time that's going to work most of the time, right? So this is 80-20. So I'm going to take the 20% in that situation that's going to influence 80% of the customers 80% of the time. Does that make sense? So that's where true mastery I really feels like is like you know exactly in this. I'll give you an example. This is not a new customer example, but it's the best example I can think of a shift we made from this. When a Cutco owner walks up to the booth, what do you do every single time? What do most people do? High five, customer list. What else? What do we usually ask them? Sharpening, right? Or like, how long have you had them? Like there is actually, these are filler questions, by the way, that are adding absolutely no value to your interaction. And they're also allowing people to walk away. So I made a shift specifically with this, and this is where I think the less is more. The number one thing we'll do, we'll take a Sets for Life packet or a Homemaker board, however you have your display. We'll say, do you see your knives here? And you point to them. I'm telling you, 99, who's seen this? Alex? We do this all the time. 99% of the time, they stop in their tracks and they walk up and they're like, well, I have this one, and they're at your booth. And it was crazy. I was like, the one little thing. So I'm telling you, there's probably one little thing here that you'll pick up this weekend that will change everything. I guarantee I doubled my past customer orders potential just with that one little thing. So less is more, and it works more of the time. So when we talk about the psychology, right? So we can transition into psychology a little bit. That's where the scripting becomes the most important, and that's where we really want to know the consumer experience. So I had one of the greatest interactions I've had at a conference in a while, and it was talking about the consumer experience at a show. Have you ever walked around your show and put yourself in the shoes of the customer before? Have you ever identified, okay, in my row, there's 3 people next to me that are hawking and pulling people in, right? So I'm not even going to be looked at unless I stand out somehow, right? So a lot of the times with new customers, we have to actually transition the way that we're approaching that new customer and pulling them into the booth based on how the show is. And people don't really talk about this a lot. So can you start to embody the consumer experience, talk to the vendors around the show, and know this is how the customer is going to feel when they actually walk up to my booth? We talk about becoming relatable as quickly as possible. And that's one way to do it. It's like, oh, you're just getting hassled by the gutter guys again? Get over here, I have something cool to show you. Right? How do you attract people to your booth? Do you guys want some little attracting people to the booth tips? All right. So what do most people say when they're talking to a new customer, when they approach the booth, especially when you're new? What is the line? Are you familiar with Cutco? Okay, awesome. I'm a fan of doing that second. So this is the consumer experience. Imagine you walked up to a booth and they're like, hey, how's it going? You familiar with Cutco? I'd be like, yo, dude, I'm just looking at some knives. Chill out. Right? Like, that's how you'd feel. If you've ever been in the shoes of a customer, recently I was buying a car and I was like, man, most salespeople suck. This is crazy, right? But I had never really envisioned myself, and I was reevaluating my whole business in this moment, because I was like, I really hope I don't do these things and make people feel that way. There are very subtle things you do to a customer, like even the nervous laugh, like, how's it going? And they're like, oh shit, another one of these? I'm telling you. Especially the customer you want to sell to who's good at business. You don't want to be that guy. So I like to talk about anything that isn't Cutco to become relatable, and it's like, hey, just so you know, I'm a cooler vendor than the other ones, okay? So like, you're okay to stay here. I'm not going to just close you on everything. Like, we're fine. So a lot of times, I'm looking for an identifier with a customer. So if a guy has a beer, right? You guys have probably done this before. It's like, hey, you didn't bring me one? And he's like, no, man, no. I was like, well, what is it? And then we've initiated an interaction, right? Can't tell you how many orders I've closed from that stupid little thing, right? Or they have a shirt, commenting on a shirt. You guys have done that, right? I mean, there's a pretty basic things, but I really recommend that you introduce the interaction with anything that's non-Cutco related that can build a little bit of rapport. You guys can think of a bunch of these on your own, I'm sure. But be friendly. Like you don't have to be like, have CPO breath. You know what I'm saying? Like you breathe on the customer, they're like, my credit card is staying in my pocket. People can tell when you're really trying to sell desperately. And that's the scarcity mindset, right? So a customer that is good can usually tell that I don't need their order, you know? But if they're the right person, I'm willing to work with them. And if they hit my checkpoints, I'll get to my close, or off you go. Right? How's it going, guys? Oh, we're just looking. Awesome. Let me know if you have questions. Right? Oh, what are you looking for? You know, and if they stay there, they're interested. Then you can approach them. And now you're not the salesperson that jumped on them. Right? Little detail. Right? I'm just looking. Who hates those people? You're like, really? Come on. You're standing at my booth. Talk to me. Right? But they don't know. Have you ever been walking around the show, again, consumer experience, and someone kind of jumps on you and you're like, dude, I was just checking out your stuff. It's cool, I'm not going to buy it. A lot of the times, or I'll just stand there and a really good vendor will be like, pretty cool, isn't it? I'm like, yep. But he's not jumping on me. So we all have to start somewhere, right? A lot of times when you're talking about what to do, and if I'm sharing what to do, we all have to start, we're all in different positions in our business. So we start with a script, then we evolve, we memorize, internalize, personalize. Can anybody spit their script right now? I'm not going to put you on the spot. But if I was a customer and I walked up to you right now, and you couldn't nail it, you probably have to go back to the drawing board. Seriously. Is anybody here on Curtis's approach? Nice, part of the room. Josh's? Okay, sweet. Some other approach, because half of you didn't raise your hands? I don't know. I haven't looked through those. So one more scale of 1 to 10, I want you guys. Where would you rate yourself on your new customer approach right now? On a scale of 1 to 10. I know, it's basic, but really think about this. And I really want to wrap up with, oh yeah, there you go. I really want to wrap up with, why are new customers the most important focus? Everybody here can sell to a Cutco owner, right? A lot of us got into the events team because we were able to grind out service calls and get past that 30K hump. You know what I'm saying? Right? So we're good at working with Cutco owners. New customers was the weakest part of my business 2 years ago. I was not closing sets. They were walking all the freaking time, right? So one of the things that I put a focus on was I was like, if you've ever had a 10K weekend at an event, if you look back at it, it's usually 2 or 3 sets that make up 80% of the CPO, right? Or 70% of the TPO. You sell a Siggy, and your weekend is much better, okay? And we've all had that Siggy walk. They're like, man, that was my show, right? You felt that? So new customers are the focus because they create the most amount of CPO and because you can start someone's interaction from scratch, right? I take a Cutco owner and they've been buying buy two, get one frees, and they had some crappy kid that didn't know how to sharpen, and I'm starting from square -10, right? Or I have a new customer and I can put them on my marketing, service them my way, and handle the consumer experience and build them up to a Cutco kitchen in the proper way, right? That's what I love about new customers. Really, it takes that focus. The average order is a lot larger. Grant Cardone says to treat every buyer like a buyer until they aren't. So how much do you expect to close? That's it. Thanks, guys.